This is Bilal Randeree, and I'm at Aljazeera forum with Mohamed Abdel Dayem, who's from the Committee to Protect Journalists. Mohamed, can you just briefly introduce yourself, the work you do?
I work with the Committee to Protect Journalists. I work for the Middle East program there. We cover 20 countries in the Middle East and North Africa, and it's basically an organization that works on journalists' rights and the rights of journalists to work without interference by governments and by non-governmental actors.
I'm sure you've heard of the unfortunate news of our colleague from Aljazeera, Ali Al-Jabir, who was ambushed last night in Libya and passed away. But he's obviously not the only journalist that's become a victim just while doing their jobs. I think it's improving for journalists in the region. What is the status?
Well, the situation for journalists in the region, especially in countries that are in the midst of revolutions or in the beginning stages of social unrest throughout the region, the situation is actually quite dire. We at the Committee to Protect Journalists have been tracking those violations in real time. In Egypt, we tracked upward of 140 such cases in a mere number of days. In Yemen, we've tracked upward of 50 such violations. In Libya, in the past few days, there have been over 40 violations, ranging from confiscation of equipment to detentions to government officials preventing journalists from moving around freely and talking to people and interviewing the people they want to interview. Instead, they're being shepherded around, being told where they can and can't go, who they can and can't talk to, and frankly, that's unacceptable. Specifically with regard to the situation in Libya, we can't forget that many of those journalists, hundreds of them, came to Libya in accordance with an invitation coming from Saif al-Islam al-Qaddafi, and it's frankly absurd that the government or Saif al-Islam al-Qaddafi, and we're not even really sure what his official capacity is, are able to invite journalists, tell them to come and report the news as they see it, and then prevent them from doing precisely that. I also want to add that the recent killing of our colleague just outside Benghazi last night came on the heels of an unprecedented campaign of intimidation and acts as well as words that are antithetical to press freedom and the right of journalists to report freely. So this comes at the tail end of this campaign, and we hold the Libyan government in Tripoli, Gaddafi's regime, responsible for the safety of all these journalists. It is incumbent upon that government and any other government anywhere else in the world to ensure the safety of journalists as they do their work.
Yeah, most Al Jazeera journalists that remain in Libya continue to do their jobs now, and they say with more resilience, with more determination than before. But I'm concerned about countries that perhaps aren't in the media spotlight in the region. Is the situation for journalists in those countries any easier, any better?
Well, relative to the situation in Libya, obviously it's better, but that doesn't mean that the situation is good. This is a region where the media is restricted virtually in every single country in this region. If we talk about the 20 countries that we cover at the Middle East and North Africa program at CPJ, the work of journalists is restricted in every single one of those countries, and so it's not really a question of whether or not there are violations of press freedom. It's a question of degree, right. And violations continue to take place, starting with Morocco and Mauritania in the west, all the way to Iran and Turkey in the east. And really every country in between. Let's not forget that according to our statistics and according to the research we've done, since the beginning of 2011, 7 journalists have been killed while performing their journalistic duties worldwide. Of those 7, 4 happen to be in the Middle East and North Africa. So that's more than half of the total number of journalists killed worldwide. And that really gives you an indication as to how hostile of an environment this is for journalists who are trying to report the news either in times of peace and times of no social protest, or in places like Libya where there is an intense military confrontation going on.
Yeah. What does the future hold? For example, a place like Tunisia, where at least the president's out. I mean, there hasn't been total change yet, but has things changed substantially enough for journalists in a place like Tunisia?
Well, in Tunisia and Egypt, there has been a regime change, and we have seen some very promising and positive developments resulting from that regime change. In Tunisia and in Egypt, journalists can write virtually freely, virtually without any restrictions. However, that alone doesn't mean that journalistic freedoms are absolute and are total. There remain a number of challenges. There remain a number of provisions in the law, be it the press law or other laws, criminal and civil laws, that restrict media freedom and that need to be amended, if not resolved and rewritten from scratch in both those countries. So while we have seen some very positive developments, there remains a lot of work to be done in both those countries and frankly throughout the region.
Thanks so much for your time. This interview is hopefully going to be up on our website. That's aljazeera.net/English. And we hope to see more of you on the rest of the forum.
My pleasure.